very briefly want to say that I'm really thrilled that we're collaborating with Flux Factory. Susan Katz is here, Program Director. Flux Factory was our very first partner in 2010, I believe. So the relationship goes back a really long way back. And this panel discussion is all about establishing bonds, networks, throughout years of working internationally, which is what Residency Unlimited has been doing and what Flux Factory has been doing. So thank you, and thank you to the Trust for Mutual Understanding for supporting this program. And let me just welcome, so I hope I pronounce your names correctly, Anna Chistoserdova. Hello. Eva Khachatryan, Tatiana Kochubinska, and moderated by Data Chigholashvili, who's the RU curator. And so thank you, and there's wine as well, if you feel like it, and very much looking forward to this discussion.
Thank you, Natalie, for the introduction. Thank you, everyone, for coming to the talk. To our wonderful participants, it feels like, coming together after many years in many countries and many travels and projects. To Flux Factory and Susan for collaboration again after many years. It's very interesting how things come together in different places throughout these collaborations, and Trust for Mutual Understanding for supporting the event. When we initially thought about this program with Susan, because they're all going, and I'm also going to the conference in Cambridge this week for transcultural exchange, and we thought, it would be wonderful to do something in New York on the way. And we thought, what is it that we could present, and what is it that we could present from our countries, the context we worked in, so that we don't make it very depressing, because it could go that way. Because the general tone is also not helping that. Then I thought, and together with Susan when we were discussing, and then with our participants, that perhaps it would be good to concentrate and acknowledge a lot of the difficulties throughout the years through which we actually all managed to do very different kind of projects, and then we realized what was important and what actually kept us going throughout really all sorts of hardships, which we will be talking about in detail more. It was really the bonds and the networks that developed throughout the years and somehow changed, extended, moved between different countries and regions. And today we will be concentrating on these exchanges more from, it's also like a couple of terms, I guess, to address geographically, to talk about the context, which we can say Eastern Europe, which could mean very different countries, depending, where we're speaking about it. I guess we will be speaking about the most Eastern Europe in this case. Eastern Partnership, which is something that, like EU programs, for instance, that was with the 6 countries, that was Georgia, Armenia, Azerbaijan, Ukraine, Belarus, and Moldova. So it was a lot of exchanges throughout those 6 countries. We'll be talking a little bit about South Caucasus, which is Georgia, Armenia, Azerbaijan, and working in that context, and then also Central Asia and the post-Soviet context about this, which we were able to work through Art Prospect network that was organized by CEC ArtsLink. Together with Susan, we worked for many years, I would say, and with all of us and a lot of other people. Today we will be mostly talking about that very, very Eastern Europe, so to speak, and those areas, right? And it is my absolute pleasure to introduce my friends and colleagues from many years. Anna Chistoserdova from Belarus, who was managing partner and co-founder of 2 independent galleries in Minsk, Belarus until 2020, Gallery Podzemka and Gallery U. And since 2021, Anna has been based in Berlin, running her projects from there, and is also a co-founder, manager, and curator of NGO Ambasada Kultury, which is in Vilnius, Lithuania.
registered.
Yes. Then we have Eva Khachatryan from Armenia, who is an independent curator and vice president of ICA Armenia, which is International Association of Art Critics, and also runs a platform called suburb.am. And Tatiana Kochubinska from Ukraine, who is an art historian, independent curator, author, and lecturer. And we're gonna go, like, everyone's gonna present a little bit about their practices, and then we'll have Q&A so that we can engage and talk about different topics. But I want to start with Eva because you wanted to talk a little bit about those, not only like the things that developed in the last years, but the early practices that you called informal residencies or informal exchanges that happened throughout travels, which first maybe was more in the context of the South Caucasus, and then how that developed, but like also the work you've been doing in Armenia in relation to that. So maybe it would be good to start from there chronologically and see where we came, how, and like, you know, what were the connections.
Mm-hmm. Thank you for introduction. Yeah, maybe we could turn on the slideshow, because what you see here is not something I'm going to talk, but I thought it would be useful if you get a little bit idea from what kind of context I'm coming from, so you can watch this and listen to me, and if there are questions afterwards about something you saw here, you can ask, of course. And yeah, we were discussing what we are going to talk about here. I just remembered when my first residency happened, actually, because as curator I'm most of the time in a place hosting people, but sometimes it happens that I'm invited to residencies, and one of the first residencies actually happened in Oslo. At that time, it was 2004. I was a guest of Office for Contemporary Art when Ute Mette-Bauer was director there at that time. And with her, we met in Tbilisi for another conference. So this is how it worked. Like, we met in Tbilisi, and she was like, "Why don't you come?" Because I was interested all the time in this, most of the time in these feminist topics, and she was also into this. And she thought, maybe you come to Oslo, and I will introduce you to some interesting people there. And I thought, like, yes, why not? And I remembered when she was really suggesting me to come, not really for 1 month, but only 2 weeks. And I was like, no, I want to come for 1 month. But then I understood why the suggestion was there, because Oslo is quite boring city. So, and she was like recommending me then to go to Berlin for 1 week. And again, I saw, of course, much more things during 1 week in Berlin than during 1 month in Oslo. But yeah, so this was like my first residency experience, but I've met really interesting people there, and yeah, radical feminists from Germany, feminist and architect and activist, and some DJs, girls, and I thought it would be really nice to bring all of them like to Yerevan. And next year, in 2005, I've organized one of my really big international projects. It was like festival dedicated to 8th of March. I know I've heard that it's not really very much popular here to go to the streets like on 8th of March and to remember what this day is about. But in our societies, where like quite patriarchal societies, it is very much important to remind society what this day is about, because in Soviet times, also when it started, like later on, it was turned into something like worshipping women, more like about flowers and gifts and presents just for this one day, and then nobody cares, yeah? And that's why I thought it would be really important to have international event and to bring all these people with really more radical views, and only women participated in this festival, like also queer people, but in the end, yeah, it was like participation. Of course, in media, it was like quite problematic. There was lots of critique, like it is about war between men and women, of course, but yeah, I mean, we had a really great time. It's quite huge number of participants coming from different countries in Europe and from Armenia. Yeah, so this is like one of the big and first maybe international events that happened in Yerevan in the beginning of my career. And at that time I was associated with the Center for Contemporary Art, where I worked till 2008. And since 2009, I decided to quit with this place because, I mean, at some point I understood that I did what I could do there already. So it was really huge space, and I was super busy to organize things like every month, if not always curating, but at least coordinating things. So I was responsible for the visual arts department there. And I thought like, okay, I need a break. And since then, I decided that I don't want to be associated with any institution for a long time. And since 2009, I'm independent as a curator. And at that time, I started to run the platform, which called like Suburb. And this is how we actually started later on with CEC Arts Link, more specifically with Season Cards. And yeah, just to give you like a little bit an idea what why it's called Suburb, because there is area in a city in Yerevan which is called Bangladesh. It's not really connected to Bangladesh, but people call it because it's really far away, and in summer it's super hot there. Sometimes there is no water, so that's why it's called Bangladesh. And there is also now art school, and my father, who is an artist, he was like in charge. He was a director of this art school, and it was quite easy like to create things there somehow because of this open-minded people and artists doing things. And this is how residency started there. So whoever, for example, was traveling to Georgia, like from Germany or from France, everybody was saying, there is a place where you could go. So in Yerevan, so when we talk about informal residencies, this is how it was happening in the end. So I was ready there to host people. So there was also a place where they could stay, very simple, but at least. And they were coming, of course, with presentations and some lectures, sometimes workshops, and yeah, so it was quite vivid actually to do things there. And already later on in 2014, I've met Susan. And it was really nice because at that time we discussed like if it makes sense to do things in a region, like exchanges, etc., and with this politically engaged context. And I thought, of course, like this is what we do here. Let's do this. And yeah, this is how it started. Like later on, maybe in 2017, when first residency was launched. But earlier, I did exhibition in St. Petersburg, like presenting Armenian artists there. Like maybe you know that CEC Arts Link had an office also in St. Petersburg. And yeah, and this is how we work since then till now with Susan. I'm really happy that although she's not associated with CEC Arts Link anymore, that's why now we jump our activities to Flux Factory. And yeah, in parallel I was also running and doing residency together with German friends and people. Yeah, I want to underline this somehow, that most of time all the projects I was doing, besides this collectiveness that you see here, that this is like one of the strategies that I'm really into and believe in. For me, this friendship was something that one of the core moments maybe of all collaborations and projects happening in Armenia and abroad, because this is how you get this long-term relations and more, how to say, yeah, more sustainable maybe projects in the sense that it could last for some time, you know, not one-time thing. Like we did something and then we say goodbye to each other. Yeah, of course, it's not happening all the time that you become friends with people, but yeah, at least I'm happy that here we sit, for example, on the panel. I didn't know Tatiana, unfortunately, before, but with Anya, yeah, I was also in Minsk by invitation of Anna Chistoserdova and her colleagues and friends, and I did some workshops there with young artists. And then these artists were in a residency in Armenia, and I was in residency also at GOR in Tbilisi. And maybe another thing also to mention, that sometimes it happens that there should be somebody else from abroad to bring the region together. This is also happening quite often, because like ArtsLink is really nice example from that point of view, because like before we were not really interested in neighboring countries. It was most of time like towards the west, so-called west, and yeah, so I think it was really for us important to find out what's happening in post-Soviet bloc and Central Asia, for example, countries. That we did one of our last projects there in Almaty. So yeah, maybe, I don't know if I'm done with 10 minutes, but just to start, maybe later on we can discuss further.
Thank you, Eva. And it's good that you mentioned word sustainability, which is something many of us had to often deal with, in our projects. And it's when you come from the part of the world that we come from, it's a very tricky term, because everything just changes so fast and has been changing, and we all have experienced that it's sometimes hard to have that sustainability in a very traditional understanding of that word, maybe, but then to have it in these other different forms that we are also discovering now, that apparently we've been doing it, if we were not very reflective about that back then. And it's something that Anna can relate to very well, because I think we met once. First we met in Poland, but we've been to too many countries, too many projects together. So I think first time was Poland, but it was Eastern Partnership project.
It was a conference in Lublin.
Probably.
Bingo.
But then I was also in residency there in Tbilisi. Again, a lot of places. And Anna, you were running 2 galleries in Minsk, and I was there also with Nini Palondishvili, my colleague, for a project, and it was really building a community of artists, especially Gallery UL, with your programs and residency and probably everything that you were doing. It was about building this community of local artists and also international artists, and then suddenly in 2020, 2021, with the demonstrations and everything that happened in Belarus, if you can also maybe give a bit of context about that, many of you and a lot of the artists had to leave the country and go in exile and disperse mostly around Europe, but maybe some of them also in the US. So a lot of people suddenly appeared elsewhere. And you continued somehow, you moved to Berlin and you continued working with these people and bringing them somehow together in the projects, but also maintaining the international network. So could you tell us maybe more about that and how you managed to do that amazing work?
Yeah, thank you. First of all, thank you for inviting us to talk about very different and important things for us. Thanks to all our supporters. First of all, I don't know how many of you are familiar what is Belarus itself and where it's situated. Could you please just give me a sign if someone really have an idea what Belarus is?
What is?
Belarus, country I came from. Wow, good, okay. So it will be probably better. Yes, as Data mentioned, I was running with my colleague for 17 years 2 main independent institutions for contemporary art, and for us, residencies and international cooperation. When I was working in Belarus, was first of all very important thing to make the life of my colleagues in Belarus much interesting and professionally engaged, because as Eva mentioned already, and Data as well, we organized the residencies where invited artists from abroad to share the experience, because we had a big problem with the educational system, and I think now it's even worse in my country. So for us it was also a possibility to run some kind of informal educational programs for curators and artists. And through this exchange of ideas or practical workshops, to bring a little bit more modern ideas about the role of contemporary art, about the new practices. And we started the residencies, like in my case, I really appreciate how Eva started her presentation. My first residency I had in 2007 in Prague, in Meat Factory, which is also a well-known institution for now. But we've been the first residents there. And it was a bit challenging because first few weeks we had a really struggle how to survive in this post-industrial environment, which was not fully prepared to host someone. So we even joked that probably with Belarusians is the best way, because we are like, we've been born to struggle, so for us it's okay to stay anyway. So, and this residency, personally for me, was very important just to, after that we started to look at what we are doing as a profession and to really realize that the gallery itself is a gallery, because we had no idea what we are doing for 3 years. It was some kind of community spot where the people met each other, openly shared their ideas, but we never mentioned ourselves as a people who is running gallery. So after this residency, we realized that we have some kind of program, plan, schedule, how we make an exposition. So for me, it was professionally very important. Then, thanks to enjoying this CSC Arts Link Art Prospect network, we opened the really new window for us, especially mid-Central Asian countries, with whom we never had any possibility to have a contact. And one of the residents we had in Minsk, which is Lafahunov, it was one of the most brilliant experience for us to work with, because it's also a very politically engaged artist, and probably some of you understanding that in country like my country, it's very important to use the political issues in art, but not openly. That's why I really appreciate to work with people who really know how to hide the very important messages through the artistic pieces. And it was quite well, I have to say, until 2020, because after 6 elections of Lukashenko, which is not president elections, it's just election of one figure who now taken power in my country almost 31 years. My gallery was forced to be closed. One of our partners was in prison for a year and a half. And thanks to the residency program and thanks to my professional international contacts, for me residency became the way to escape a prison, because officially I can't go back home, because I will be detained and probably will spend like few years in prison for my beautiful cultural work before elections. So, and the strategy to bring in something to Belarus, to help my colleagues, totally changed, to bring Belarusians abroad, to help them survive, escape problems, or just openly create something which they have no possibility to create in my country. So since we moved to Berlin, we started the project You Can Easily Find the Perspective, which we realizing together with diaspora organization, Belarusian diaspora organization Razam. So we created a network of institutions across Germany and Poland who are hosting Belarusian cultural workers. Unfortunately, these residencies we can't make longer than 3 months, but sometimes, especially for those who still live and work in Belarus, it's quite okay to escape at least for these 3 months, just to breathe, to enjoy art, and to make some projects. Usually the people whom we're supporting and who still live in Belarus taking part in our residencies anonymously, because it's not safe for them to openly saying how they spend time in Europe. So now in our network we have like more 15 organizations from both countries who are hosting people, and we hope that it could be the regular for them even without this project. And the second project we doing now for Belarusians, it's also I was fellow of this program, which is called Martin Roth Initiative. It's a program which is supported by Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Germany for artists in need. So it's temporary relocation programs, and we are doing it in Lithuania. We can bring artists and cultural workers at risk at least from 3 to 6 months, and 6 months is quite enough to understand are they ready to come back or to stay somewhere. And about friendship, it's exactly what we, especially people from Eastern Europe, know how to deal big things and big projects based on trust and friendship and less on money. I'm usually very surprising how many things we can do, at least as a volunteer, for free, because we are curious, because we are always ready to support each other. And I think the strategy, especially in times when almost all of us who still live in our countries or was forced to flee, this question of support and solidarity very important, because from one point of view we had a common past, which we called USSR. Then some of our countries choose the different direction in political life, but unfortunately there is no good news for now. Almost all our countries, I think that probably Eva now has the best position between 4 of our countries. So
We could argue, I think.
yeah. What?
We could argue, I think.
So, but I think that it's important that it's about solidarity. I think Tatiana will later share the information. So, I just wanted to say that the strategy, since I started to work with the residencies, changed much from like inside of my country to getting abroad and with people. So, and later probably through the questions and answers I can talk more. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Anna. And yeah, it's really changing so fast everywhere, and alarming news and very bad situations. And yeah, we can. I don't even think it's like, you know, we can even say who's in better condition or worse. But there are things happening more urgently in some places than others. And Tatiana is from Ukraine, where, as you all know, Russia's full-scale invasion already 3 years ago, which is just 3 years of war basically in the country. And then you said something, we talked about it and what it means to make art in a situation like that, but you also mentioned something very interesting and in a way paradoxical, that you said that the war sort of like gave more visibility to artists from Ukraine, but at the same time more restrictions for them to like move out of the country. So I was wondering, could you tell us more about your work in relation to that and how you've been dealing with that and what was your response?
Yeah, thank you so much for the introduction. Yeah, I think we can turn on the presentation. Yeah, thank you all for coming, and of course, and thanks to the Residency Unlimited, and of course Susan again, because I think we are all part of very personal networking. And yeah, before I talk about the situation that we are now and the question of art and exhibition making, I would focus mostly about exchange in the situation of war, and art exchange and possibilities of language, and if it is necessary to do art, and what could be done. Like while my colleagues were talking about residencies as a way to learn about each other, I realized that I have also a connection to residency, because I met you, Susan, thanks to Eva Khachatryan and Eva Khachatryan, artists who invited me to contribute to the residency in Kharkiv. And exactly this is a city, Kharkiv, that I will talk about. So it's interesting that I took part in this residency, which was called Ava School HTZ, that researched the urban context of Kharkiv. The city, which is very much important for me personally, but also for Ukraine and for the arts. And this residency happened before the full-scale invasion, and now I will focus on the city again, 3 years after that residency. So it's interesting that again, like this exchange and art exchange and networking becomes a possibility and opportunity to make exchange and to think collectively and to think also about art as a communication. And also I would like just to reflect, we are all coming from this very complex context inflicted by war, affected by war in different times, but I think it would be really a wrong direction to think who is in better or worse situation. And of course now, and recent news and what's happening now, and I think I don't need to represent Ukraine on the map in a way due to recent news and what's happening right now, because on the one hand we have war, but despite all these atrocities and violence, and when we were talking with colleagues here in New York, I realized that despite everything and this very violent aspect of war, at the same time many things are going on in Ukraine. So basically we have projects which are funded by private institutions, like, I don't know, Pichuk Center, or many other institutions or smaller galleries. We have also state-funded programs, and there were a few new institutions that appeared after 2022, and I find it also paradoxical, but at the same time very inspiring and feeling, I don't know, maybe given some hope, because despite everything, the artistic process is happening. Of course, it's much more complex, but despite anything, we can do something. And this question, like if art is needed or not needed during war, because, for example, recently we heard that some institution in Kharkiv didn't get financing because of the current geopolitical situation. But despite everything, this process is going on, and for us, for example, it's not even a question, like doing or not doing art or exhibitions during war is no longer a question, because it's really important. And I would like to focus on one project that we made also together with Anna as part of the Anti-War Coalition team. It's a team of artists, curators, cultural managers, which was, like, Anna is co-founder, I'm somebody who joined later. But for me, in recent years, it's a very important project. It's initiative where we basically put this question: what can we do as art practitioners in this conflicted and very complex situation? And for years we were thinking to this institute. Our initiative was established after full-scale invasion, and it was initiated by my colleagues from Belarus. And we were thinking first, when we had different screenings or programs within our initiative, the main goal was to make awareness in Europe about the war and what's happening. But at some point in 2 years of our existence, we thought, if we can do anything in Ukraine, because we always had this ethical question, like, how would you bring art to the city of Kharkiv? And I put this Kharkiv here, because you can see that this is 26 kilometers from the Russian border. And the city is condemned to daily shellings every day. And just recently after the conference, it was again horribly hit. Even medical institution was hit. And we were thinking, if we dare to do or propose an exhibition there, but what we learned from this experience, that art is needed. And we worked with the institution, Yermilov Center, and with director Natalia Ivanova, who said that it's needed. It's out of question, because art and the possibility to consume in a good way, like to think of art as a communication, it gives you a certain understanding of normalization of life. And we made this exhibition last year altogether. It was a huge project. I can talk about this project for hours. That's why I would like to focus only on one work and to relate to the experience that you might have. I'm talking about the project which was called Sense of Safety. And yeah, coming back to New York, what is a link? So you might have seen this exhibition by Thomas Hirschhorn, Fake It Until You Fake It, in the Gladstone Gallery. So it's February 2024, and maybe the next slide. And in half a year, in August 2024, we have again Thomas Hirschhorn in Kharkiv. And like in this first exhibition, Fake It Until You Fake It, he's really describing our time and critically thinking about our time, because he put this question of artificial intelligence, but at the same time of artificial belief. And with current use, we can talk about artificial diplomacy and whatever. So he's an artist, someone who's really sensing the time and the nerve. And when we were thinking of our exhibition, Sense of Safety, we wanted to invite Thomas with some of his works or maybe objects, because for years he has been exploring the concept of art as a shelter since Gulf Wars in 1990. So we wanted to invite him to respond in some way. But he said, I will come. Because we could not even imagine inviting anyone, because it's about responsibility, because it's risky. But at the end, he came up with a concept, and he said, what we are doing in Kharkiv is already art as a shelter, and what I can do as an artist and as a human being, I can just come and I can talk to people and I can exchange and I can communicate. And basically he came to Kharkiv and made a few workshops and a public lecture. And in this situation of war and isolation, because on the one hand, yeah, as Data mentioned, yeah, we have more visibility of Ukrainian art, but it's also a great pain in which way this visibility is being reached. But here, in the situation of the city, which is on the border of war, an artist is coming and he's sharing the same risks with people, and he's producing these workshops where people can freely express, where they can communicate, and at least for a short period of time, forget about what's going on outside, but being there and dream and hope and discuss, because within these workshops, every individual not connected to art at all, any person could come with an art object and talk about the art object and discover if there is energy or not. And it was very special. And later, and one more, probably the previous one, sorry. Yeah, and here you can see also the space of the institution in Kharkiv, Yermilov Center, which is located in the Karazin University, one of the major universities in Ukraine, the first university in Ukraine, and it's located in the bomb shelter. I mean, it's located in the basement. It has never been conceived as a bomb shelter, but the institution was founded in 2012, but since the full-scale invasion, it is a certified bomb shelter. And it's also the concept of sense of safety that we were thinking about art as giving these possibilities people to come to this art shelter, to take your time, to come back, because it's university, it's free of charge, and people, of course, are coming back. And yeah, the next, I would like just also to, because Thomas Hirschhorn, he also formulated all of his experience on his Instagram page very quickly about his experience in Kharkiv. And exactly here, he's talking about this situation after the workshop, when he's saying that after an alarm sounded around noon that Sunday morning, at least 4 explosions were heard, and the iPhone information signified that the shelling was not far. And what he's writing, and then he says that I suddenly realized that a lot of people were inside the gallery space, visitors of the exhibition looking at the artwork, with others coming from outside to the shelter. And of course, it's paradoxical and horrible way to exchange, but the institution is becoming both a physical place for giving you safety, but also by the means of art in a very symbolical way. And just to finish, I would like also, if I'm taking Thomas' work in contribution to our exhibition, the case study, I would like also to quote him from his public lecture that he has given. And I think that this gesture, what he made, is one of the examples for me what type of art and how you can convey solidarity. But at the same time, of course, I don't dare everyone coming, because it would be irresponsible from my side. But it was a decision of the artist to come in person, to share, to live together, to work together, to share risks together. And what he said that it's a small gesture of I can do as a human being and also as an artist, to pay some solidarity to this fantastic work here, to this architecture. And he's saying also, I'm an activist for my work and in my work. So this is my modest contribution in being an activist. Let us be human. And I think, yeah, let us be human and do our work. But at the same time, maybe a question that I have, and I don't have an answer for myself. For me, this gesture was a gesture of profound solidarity with people. But at the same time, this gesture was realized already in the situation of a catastrophe, when like just 30 kilometers from here, people are killed, but also in the city, people are killed. And my question would be, and I think it's maybe a naive question to the whole art system, if we can prevent and create a solidarity before the catastrophe happens. Like, I mean, Belarus has become more visible in terms of culture and art after the protest, Ukraine after the war, and I think we can have so many examples worldwide. And if we can do anything to convey the solidarity, but a bit before the most horrible thing happens. Yeah, thank you, and I think we can.
Thank you, Anna, Tatiana, and Eva, for presentations. Before we open the floor for Q&A, I want to maybe start with one question to all of you. It's something that Tatiana said, which I think all of us and probably everyone in the room stands by, is a sentence that art is needed. And I think this is why we've been doing this despite a lot of challenges and predicaments, etc. And I was wondering, like, to put it more in direction of art creation and to also address it from your curatorial experiences and perspectives, because you've done many, many years of very important and interesting curatorial work as well in your countries, but also internationally. What are your thoughts about art is needed and what kind of art is needed, building on different examples of, like in crisis or in like less crisis, but do you think it's something that is more responding directly to the problem, or it's something that actually maybe takes away and gives something, especially with like community engaged art that all three of you have done as far as I know? So like where do you stand on that from your curatorial perspective, again building on the unique examples and contexts that you've worked in? I want to start this one.
Yeah, I mean, there is, I think, no really one-side answer to this question, but from my point of view, I think we are used to crisis, yeah, in our region, it's always crisis there, but at the same time, maybe during the COVID, there was this idea that, okay, even if we have to be isolated at this time, at the same time, everybody wanted to be together, and even in physical space, and this is how, for example, artists run Yerevan Biennale started. I mean, first edition was just in 2020, and then later on we did exhibition when COVID still was there. Just after the war with Azerbaijan, there was another project that I have initiated, again with support of ArtsLink. I mean, this collectivity moment, why I put this presentation also in the beginning, I think this, at least for me, this is like one of the core, I would say, ideas that maybe collectiveness is one of the maybe receipts that could be used in a crisis, like solidarity is based on this so-called friendship based on this somehow. And it's not only local, it's international. I mean, we have lots of examples of different networks which are like have this collectiveness as a basis, So I think these are like one of the answers, at least for me.
I can continue. For me, frankly speaking, it's a very hard question, because on the one hand, when you are inside the atrocities, you put this question, but at the same time, historically speaking, like when the war, full-scale invasion started, first I was in Kiev, like we were volunteering with my sister, then I was in Germany, and when I went to the museum for the first time, I could see the works of Nancy Sparrow about war in Vietnam, Gerhard Richter about Holocaust, William Kentridge about apartheid, and it's something that resonated me. And it's not my thought, but we had a conversation about this with one artist, and we thought that like great art can be also produced after great failure, and there are so many examples, like post-war Germany art. And I'm frightened about this because on the one hand we can have these examples when you're in a situation of conflict here and now, and when you see and feel this, like for example now I feel this helplessness in terms of geopolitical failure, that diplomacy fails and it cannot prevent any type of dictatorship, then art, on the one hand, it's becoming the only value because it's something that keeps us alive. And I can imagine it sounds so like very pathos, but one artist of our show who is based in Kharkiv, he said, thanks to this exhibition, I felt myself alive again. But at the same time, in a historical perspective, there is so much important and great art which is born from violence and trauma. And I think that for me personally, trauma is also a very important source for arts. Despite in this situation we need communication mostly, and we wouldn't bring very traumatic experience. Or we could bring, like for example, with the work of ex-Yugoslavian artist Mark Pozhleb, who is dealing with the war, but with a distance in the Yugoslav war, but at the same time in a way when he's not reproducing this violence, and trauma is somehow hidden inside the way he like make a journey in his video and music works.
So, from my point of view, I would love to answer this question not only from the position of curator or manager, but also from position of, as you mentioned, community creating point. And I have two examples. The first, when at the beginning of 2020, my gallery, we closed it because it was not safe for visitors to continue our daily work. And from one point of view, what the gallery, which are always open for the visitors, can provide in the times of pandemic. So my gallery in few days changed to the hub for collecting and distributing the needs for medical clinics in Belarus, because like in my country, as Lukashenko said, I can't see the virus, it seems that it not exist. And we had no any kind of governmental support. So what we done as a community, as a people in my country, we collected money, we bought equipment, we delivered it all across the country. So, and for me, I think sometimes art can make step back and the community can create a situation where it could be more workable. Then a few months later, when the pandemic stopped, but with election and political events started in my country, we created a situation that my gallery changed a lot as a community center. In one room we had some kind of relaxation zone for those who had no enough energy to take part in active demonstrations, but also wanted somehow to share the thoughts or scare about what's going on in the country. And we, together with artists, created the project, which was called Today, Tomorrow, Every Day. It was a collective embroidery which fixed the everyday news related to our revolution. So, and the embroidery is a process of also meditation from my point of view. It's also some kind of tool to work with a very stressful situation, and the people gathered together, was talking to each other. We also had some place where the people put the stickers with their confessions, and it was a very beautiful sticker which was written by the man, 20 years old man, who said, "I'm really scared that I will be not taken to the future Belarus, the better Belarus, because I had no enough energy to attend the demonstrations." So it was really clear message, and it's very hard to say clear, yes. So, and the last exhibition we had before the closure of the gallery, it was an exhibition we really wanted to do during the pandemic, before all this bloody violence, which now going more than 5 years in my country, started. It was also a very good gesture of solidarity of the artist. This exhibition was had a title Touchable Distance. It's exactly we wanted to talk about this pandemic time when we really wanted to be together, but we had no possibility to travel, even to hug our relatives. So, and we just invited all the artists with whom we've been working since the beginning. So we had a mailing list around 120 artists. And in fact, all the works, some works were provided, some works were really commissioned specially for the exhibition, of course with no budget, because those time our accounts were already frozen by KGB and we can't operate any more. So, and at the end we had 28 participants and 20 from abroad, only 8 Belarusians. And it was such a really touchable thing for us, as like final goodbye for Gallery U in Minsk and in Belarus, and from another point of view, these connections we linked from the beginning, which we are still have. So sometimes not only needs, but surrounding or challenges can change not only artistic way of work, but institution itself. So, and for me, I think that these 2 cases or 3 cases are more familiar. Yeah.
Thank you. I think we can open the floor for questions. If anything they want to start with.
I have a thought. It's a bit more abstract than a question, so please take it as just as if we're having dinner and I'm saying something and you just answer whatever comes to you. You've been talking about collectivity in a lot of ways, and it made me think of the kind of wrongness of the verticality of Maslow's hierarchy of needs. You know, 1943, Maslow says food, shelter, belonging, self-esteem, self-actualization, and it goes in this order, this sequence. And it seems like it's a kind of it's a triangle and a hierarchy that's not only vertical, but really established for an individual, you know? And you guys are talking about collectivity, solidarity, really a horizontal, even though there is leadership, for sure, it's a horizontal model of leadership that comes from a lot of different directions, and is so critical to creating a kind of a multiplicity of voices that can counter a centralized propaganda from a government, and that's why it's so threatening to them. So I wonder if you think that there is a kind of, it's kind of the same question, is art necessary, but maybe a different way of asking it. Do you think that there is something just so essential to the kind of collective action that really reorients our model of need? We're not thinking about something where actualization comes last. It's actually the artwork that gets made in a concentration camp, or the, you know, you don't have food, but you're still going to draw, you're still going to write, you're still going to make music. So what is it, do you have any kind of sense of a response to the idea of a horizontal leadership and collectivity as a reorientation of not only politics but also the sequence of events of what we feel that we need? Is that too abstract?
You give kind of solution solution to you give kind of solution to what could be done, but I mean it's really difficult. But maybe because I also was talking about collectivity and collectiveness, but I think it is coming also from this idea of self-organization. But because contemporary art, I mean, it never was state-funded, at least in Armenia. Yeah, sometimes there are some funds, but really rare, and most of the time it's self-organized. And if there are no international funds, it's really super difficult. And that's why I mean, in these self-organized structures, this collectivity comes in a very natural way, friends come together. I mean, I myself did really lots of zero-budget projects, at least in the beginning of my career. When you are excited about something, then friends come together and we do something. And recently, this artist-run Biennale happened in Yerevan during pandemic, which was also very much based on this really horizontal ways, and it happened. It was really international, big event, but I mean, again, without any institutional background. Yeah, I think I don't know if this is really a solution and how we can provide this strategy to larger, I don't know, structures, but. Yeah, I mean, this is how we also survive somehow in our environments.
Do you think that horizontality is threatening to that more vertical leadership, and that may be part of why you are on the chopping block in Belarus? And is it that whole model, not only what you say, but the model itself as a threat?
So it's another good example now, how for us now, that after living 30 years with a totally vertical structure, of course everyone wants to be a little bit horizontal. From another part, I think that especially people from societies with a long dictatorship naturally need to be led by someone. And this horizontal structure sometimes becoming a bit chaotic, because we are always looking for leader. It's a very, I think, that psychological thing. But what I wanted to mention that the strategy, as Eva mentioned as well, so we never had any kind of sustainable support, even not from state, but even from business. So it was always complicated to combine. So that's why we really know how to deal with tiny budgets and to do really sexy things. In art and culture, other things we really by ourselves have to take care on education, on international presence, because no one will do the only we are as a professional community. And what we are working now, it's also totally horizontal structure, which we deal how to work with it really, because it's a very important question. To find this workable model, not only to be horizontal, but be productive, because sometimes it's different things. So it's a project which is called Open Museum, which we already wanted to open a museum of contemporary art in Belarus, and we even had a space in 2020, which we also lost. So, and since 2022, my organization, Ambasada Kultura, with a working team from independent curators. It's also Sergei Shabokhin, who was a part, I think, who sees here, Sling as well, and he's an editor of online magazine about history of contemporary Belarusian art, trying to establish, which we called nomadic infrastructure, which will become the basis for future museum of contemporary art, which is not exist in Belarus. And as almost all my colleagues were forced to leave, and all our archives, at least archive of both my galleries, were taken during the search, and now KGB has a special research about history of contemporary Belarusian art, I hope, or not, I don't know. But really, almost all my colleagues lost their archives. And what we should do together, just to fix this history, because every new year, unfortunately, it becomes really imaginary. And in 5+ years, it will be the new first gallery of contemporary art in Belarus. So in our situation, it's a real need to be collective, to create some horizontal structures just to survive, to support, and to exist. So I think that, I don't know, probably in Ukraine a little bit different situation, but before war, let's say.
I think that the question of like, there are many aspects of this, and I think self-organization is really important on different levels. Like in the 90s, it was like we had also only Soros Foundation, I think mostly, but there were a lot of artist-run institutions throughout the whole country, some performances and artistic practices. Basically, in the 90s, the artist was a curator, visitor, critic. Like it was more about community, so it's very important. And with our revolution, it's also important to build communities. But I think, like for me, for my practice, I would maybe divide like one thing. When you look at it, it's historical, from the historical perspective. Like for example, now in one studio, artist studio, have become a certain phenomena during the war, because when the war started, I mean the full-scale invasion, when it started, like many artists united, and this Institute of Automatics, it's called like this, but there were artist studios, they really created a community and started making exhibitions because they had a need to unite and being together. But I personally don't fully believe in horizontal structures when it comes to responsibility. And I worked in institution, which was like power institution. I worked in the museum since 2019. I'm an independent curator, but also I worked with some exhibitions that had zero budget, like really nothing, but which I remember with great admiration. But after all of this different experience, I wouldn't really believe in fully working horizontally, but I would not relate it to having a leader or not having, or having like dictator leader in the country, because I think that we didn't have it in Ukraine. Even our president Yanukovych, Viktor Yanukovych, whose policy basically caused the revolution in 2013, 2014, I wouldn't call him a dictator, because we always had this change of power, and I think that we had only one regular elections in the country. So that is why I wouldn't relate it, but in terms of responsibility and making final decisions, there should be someone like an entity, I don't know who is taking this responsibility. Therefore, practically, I would, but at the same time, I recognize that it's crucial at some moments. Okay. And if we took a history of Ukrainian art and like artists from Lviv Open Group, whose practice is fully based on interaction and engagement, they made a huge exhibition and research in Wrocław about these engagement practices in Ukraine since 2000, I think, till, I don't remember when the exhibition happened, and they made a really thorough research throughout like different cities, which from Kiev perspective, though I was born in Kiev, and despite, like, on the one hand, we have so many decentralized, the tendency of decentralization, but at the same time, these artists who are also a collective and who just came together, they are all from Uzhhorod, but came together in Lviv in some studio and discovered so many mythologies, and this studio was a studio of very famous artists of the 80s, and like they played with all this mythology, and their whole like practice is this collective kitchen, and they created like a really very important exhibition where they emphasized bringing together so many cities that many Ukrainians have never been. So therefore, yeah, I would say, yeah, just repeating, but I'm ambivalent about this because I recognize it as an artistic practice, but my character and personality, I am a bit doubting.
I also add one thing related to this horizontal structure, because anti-war coalition which is an initiative Tatiana mentioned, and our team is 6 people. We are horizontal, trying, sometimes we are trying to be, some of us vertical, but then also coming down as a horizontal. But the concept itself of this coalition was to invite the people, artists, activists, and also institutions worldwide to join this coalition of cultural workers in solidarity with Ukraine. And it worked well, I have to say, because not only we as the 6 people in the horizontal team as initiators, but how it works with what's going on, because now at the platform we have more than 130 artists. Oh, it's a Belarusians have to be, I have to run. So more than 130 artists submitted their works just for free, with no special honorariums. Of course, we had for people in need, like especially Ukrainians, Belarusians, Georgian artists as well. But after that, these artists, at least 2 years ago, we had an exhibition here in New York, which was initiated and organized by the artist who submitted his work firstly to the platform, and then he said, wow, great idea, let's do something in New York. And same we had in Split with a video festival. So when the participants of the projects also initiating exhibitions or events, which they also founded by themselves, so with no additional support from our side. And in that case, it works very well.
Right, where there can be leadership inside of a horizontal model, so it's not just to say that there's a binary between
of course,
where Trump is like, I am the law. But rather that there can be multiple leaderships emerging from inside of something.
Maybe we can take one more question if someone wants to ask. Or yes.
I have a comment. Sort of while you were talking about your exhibition in Kharkiv. So this is sort of a philosophical idea of what your decisions are when you're deciding to be curating these culture projects about community, since we're talking about community and responsibility. So how do you decide when something happens because you are doing an exhibition that references the crisis in any of your countries, and then suddenly this group comes in to the bomb shelter to escape being bombed, and they're not involved in the culture world or the art world? And how do you decide how you're going to present work? You know, we're all in the same group, we all know kind of what we're doing, but then there's this whole world out there that is not in our world. And so how do you make those decisions when people maybe don't want to think about the crisis and they want to see work that doesn't necessarily reference, you know, doom and gloom? I know it's sort of a reductive idea about what we're talking about, but how do you make those decisions, and do you think about them subjectively and objectively?
Yeah, we thought about this. Yeah, but first of all, I have to say that it's not like, it's a collective exhibition which was curated by the Anti-War Coalition, and we had a curatorial group from our team, which were 4 people, but also and it was crucial for us, we invited curator Marina Koneva, who is based in Kharkiv, and she is working also for a private collection, and she never left, I mean, she left the country for very short travels, but for us it was really crucial to engage somebody who is there, because even though, like, for example, I'm in Kiev, and of course there were scared moments, because even now when I was leaving on the last night, there was some explosion that I was frightened, and I went to the corridor to sleep. So, I mean, it's happening throughout the whole country, but also in Kharkiv it's different, and it's different when you are always based. And for us it was important to work with Marina as somebody who is having this experience all the time, and basically she's the one who, bless you, who invented the concept, the idea of safety, because it was a horrible night in Kharkiv, it was shelling, and she has huge windows in her apartment, and she was so frightened, but at the same time, as a responsible person, she was thinking, oh, tomorrow I have a meeting with my colleagues. I need to propose something. And I mean, it's funny and not funny at the same time, but what she made, she covered herself with a thick blanket. And she thought, if I'm under the blanket, then maybe if this glass breaks, I will be safe. And the next morning when we have a Zoom meeting, she said, like, I have this idea, what do you think? And all of us liked the idea, and we started working. So first, like, I don't know if I'm answering your question, but first of all, it was important to engage someone from the local art scene who is witnessing all these things. At the same time, we consulted also with Natalia, the director of the Ermilov Center, but also we consulted with an artist who was our architect of the exhibition, but he's someone who is working much with military things. And when we were so, to say, over ethical and over taking care that it might be traumatizing for people, it might be vulnerable for people, he said, guys, people live this reality for 2 years and a half, and please don't make it over nice, because people see it. And that is why when we were making an exhibition, while selecting every work, we didn't want to be, so to say, very sweet, but at the same time we didn't want to be violent. And while working, for example, also on some new productions, we wanted to emphasize this ambivalence of safety. Like, or maybe can you just show the very first slide? Like just an example of the artist with whom we worked. Like basically, maybe I should show, like this staircase. It's an art intervention. The artist who is working usually with photography and very subtle things about motherhood and drawing, like her practice is very gentle and subtle. And it's interesting that we made this work online because she has a small kid and she left the country, but she made this intervention. So basically there was a staircase and she created this like thing, but at the same time underneath here there was a carpet and people could get into and crawl and see a video. And on the one hand it was just a gesture like you can feel safe, but at the same time it was very uncomfortable because when you lie underneath and somebody is stepping on top, you hear the sound. And some people, audience from Kharkiv, they responded and said, this is an amazing work. Despite that it reminded of bomb shelters, you feel like a bit squeezed, but at the same time, you feel safe. And for people, this experience, it was not traumatic. So I cannot answer about each work, but we were trying to keep this balance of this ambivalence, not being too gentle, because local people said, guys, come on, we have seen so much, don't be. But of course, we would not show the ruins or violence. Or like, for example, in Kirshorn lecture, one person asked, because Thomas was talking about the concept of a ruin generally, and one person asked, and do you know that ruins in real life smell? You know, but it was a dialogue and it was possible to talk. I cannot also answer because I wasn't present there all the time for installation, and then I came afterwards for guided tours and like some, I don't know, lectures. But yeah, we were trying to keep this balance by talking to people, locals, architects who was helping to produce all the things. Like really talking with the community, both artistic community, but somebody outside, because it's a university, so we were also thinking about some audiences there. I think
Eva, Anna, you want to add anything on this topic?
Maybe I would add that sometimes it's just very much difficult to be productive and to do things. So sometimes to be silent also a way, and I don't think that it doesn't mean that artists are not active. They're thinking, they're reading, they're meeting, having discussions. This is also like part of the activity that I find really important. So it's not always about production. Yeah, so this is also the way. Just to add that this, because when we are like really in this post-traumatic situation, it's sometimes very much difficult also to reflect to events and to do something like immediately. You know, sometimes it's working, sometimes not. So we had this moment of silence, for example, after the war in 2020, when it was just only now, like after all these years, I feel that, okay, now maybe there will be this moment of reflecting on this, yeah? So I think this is also just...
Yeah, but just like a very short comment, because what you describe, one artist, when the revolution started, he exactly said, because he was making like huge installation, spectacular, and then I want to make invisible art. Not to say it's silent, but it's...
Yeah.
I think it's also...
Or not to do any art in the sense of production.
Yeah.
Thank you very much again. Please join me.
Thank you.
We can continue informally. There's some wine over there.